everybody, welcome back to the studio. This week and probably next week I'm going to work on a ring that has a shank that is stamped, pierced, and layered. So we're going to pierce and stamp one layer, then sweat solder it down to a base layer just to create a lot of texture and interest. And then we're going to set a rectangular stone. So I've got this real pretty piece of Chinese turquoise, and we're going to set that. But I'll probably save the stone setting for next week, and this week we'll just work on making the shank and coming up with a stamped pattern. So I'm starting with some of this metal tape, and it's tape that you would use to wrap ductwork in your house. But it's a really good way just to test out your stamping without messing up expensive sheets of metal. So I just have put it down to a piece of paper, give it a little more cushion. And then I can kind of take what stamps I think I want and press them into it and see if I like the pattern before I actually stamp. I've pulled 3 stamps that I'm going to play around with first and see what I can come up with. I can just lightly press these into this tape and it gives me an impression. So my first try, I'm going to put the little dot dot all the way down the length, and then I'm going to try and put this little bow tie close to each other, that way I can put a circle dot in between. But I do want to pierce some pieces out too, so I'm not quite sure yet how I'm going to do that. Maybe I'll put 2 of these together, then leave a little bit of space. But I just kind of rock it back and forth. Don't have to press too hard, and it gives me an impression. Just going to do a few more. I'm going to leave a little bit of space. I might come up with something else I want to put in there. Or that could be the area that I cut out. And I'm not too concerned with having this all lined up right. I just want to try and figure out what my pattern's going to be. Hi, Jet. Jet's down here in the studio with us. And we have a new baby too. His name's Victor. And he's sitting back here behind me in the chair. You can kind of see his tail. Victor, you want to turn around? There he is. Here's our new baby Victor. Pretty happy with that. I think I'm going to try and be a little more precise this time and make the band a little bit narrower and see how it comes out. Gonna do some stamping, Victor? Here. Let's do some stamping. Yeah. Just realized I stamped this in the opposite direction that I did the first one, but I think I like the second one better. You just never know. Victor, what are you doing? You gotta stay in my lap. Gotta stay in my lap. What you got on you? The mistake that I made on the second one gave me another idea, so I started a third row, and I think the third one is the charm. So I'm going to stamp them super close together and then cut out the little half rounds on each side that it's created. So I think now I will get some copper or brass, whatever I have, and do a test run in some actual metal. Found a nice thick piece of brass, so I'm going to do my test pattern on that. Let's see how wide this ended up being. So we need about 1.5 centimeters. I'll now take this to the bench shear and cut a strip off for practicing. I'm going to take my dividers and measure it out to about 1 millimeter and then just run it along the side, and that'll give me an edge for the little dot stamp. I'm just going to do it lightly. Running a little line of ink on there just so I can see it better while I stamp. Victor has swiped my chair, so I'm just going to try and squat down here at the vise and stamp. Actually, I need better glasses. And I'm just kind of starting with the stamp angled a little bit, and then I start and then I kind of rock it to the full length. Probably can't see. Did my first little test row, And it was nice to line that bow tie stamp up along with the center line. But I think on this next little bit, I'm going to do one side, then I'm going to stamp the little dot in the center. That way I get the spacing between those two bow tie stamps right. This one's a little bit close when I went back in to stamp the circle dot. Okay, so I've got the one side with the bow tie, and then I've put the center dot in. Now I'm going to go back and do the other side and see if that keeps my stamping straighter. And it'll depend on what stamps that you use, but you'll probably have to do a few practices like that to figure out what order you should stamp in. Got the stamping, and I've gone ahead and drilled holes where I want to pierce through this layer. Got my pattern finalized. I'm happy with that, and these are the little cutouts that I'm going to do on this one, and I'll repeat it on this other side, but since this is just my brass practice, I'm not going to do that right now. So I think I'm ready to attempt this on the silver. Got my piece stamped and pierced, and it's to the length that I want. And normally I would solder this down to a piece that's a little bit bigger than this and then trim up to it. But this one, my little scrap piece from the bigger sheet, is almost the right size, so I'm gonna just use that. I'm trying to conserve my silver and use as much of my scrap as possible. So I'm just gonna go ahead and hopefully get that lined up just right. We'll see. Gonna brush both sides with some flux. I'm going to take a pumice wheel and go around the edges where I've just sanded with 2 different grits of sandpaper with these sandpaper barrels. And this is just a small cut of this fine sandpaper sponge. Just kind of going around the inside and the edges to ground that and make it comfortable when you put it on. And since I didn't solder this down to a larger piece, you can kind of see my 2 layers, but that doesn't bother me. You could sand it down and get rid of that. But I don't mind that since I've got so much other texture and cutouts. Does not bother me. And I took my saw when I was doing my little cutouts and I went down the length of this because I wanted it to kind of have the appearance of 3 separate pieces. But with the convenience of soldering down 1 piece and not trying to keep 3 pieces in line. So I'm going to take this to my belt sander and flatten the top here. If you didn't have a belt sander, you could just use a file and put it upside down and run it across the file. I have the top sanded flat, and that's where the bezel will go next week. So I think we'll stop at this point this week. I'm going to throw this back in the pickle pot and clean it up a little bit. And then next week we'll make a bezel and put the 2 together. And some polishing and setting.